There is a place far from the reach of most where the land meets the wild, unforgiving sea, the Flannan Isles. A remote and windswept cluster of rocks off the western coast of Scotland stand as silent sentinels in the North Atlantic. They are uninhabited, desolate, and known to sailors as a treacherous place where the forces of nature reign supreme. For centuries, these islands were a place of myth and superstition, known as the Seven Hunters, but in 1900 they became the site of one of the strangest and most enduring maritime mysteries of all time. At the turn of the 20th century, the Northern Lighthouse Board completed the construction of a lighthouse on the largest of the Flannan Isles, Eilean Mor. The lighthouse, built to warn ships of dangerous waters and jagged rocks, stood tall and strong against the elements. Manned by 3 experienced keepers, it was a beacon of safety in one of the most perilous stretches of ocean. James Ducat was the principal keeper, a man with years of experience respected for his calm and steady nature. Thomas Marshall, the first assistant keeper, was known for his diligence and attention to detail. Donald MacArthur, the occasional keeper, was a seasoned seaman, toughened by years at sea, but also known for his fiery temper. Together, they were entrusted with the task of keeping the light burning, guiding ships safely through the treacherous waters that surrounded Eilean Mor. Life on the Flannan Isles was a life of routine, of isolation, and of vigilance. The keepers worked in shifts, maintaining the light, recording the weather, and ensuring that the lighthouse operated smoothly. The isolation was intense. Weeks could pass without any contact with the outside world, save for the rare relief ship bringing supplies and a temporary replacement to allow the keepers some rest. But in December of 1900, something went terribly wrong. On December 15th, the lighthouse's light, which had faithfully shone across the dark waters every night, suddenly went out. For sailors, the extinguished light posed a real threat and was a sign that something had gone amiss. The SS Arctur, a steamer passing through the rough waters near the Flannan Isles, was the first to notice the darkness where the lighthouse should have been. The crew reported the missing light upon their arrival in port, and soon concerns spread through the maritime community. The Northern Lighthouse Board was alerted, and a relief ship, the Hesperus, was dispatched to investigate. It took 11 days for the Hesperus to reach Eilean Mor, delayed by the same stormy weather that had likely extinguished the light. When the ship finally approached the island on December 26th, those on board knew something was very wrong. As the Hesperus drew near, the crew expected to see the lighthouse keepers waiting at the landing stage, ready to receive their supplies. But nobody was present. The island seemed deserted, the flagstaff was bare, and no smoke rose from the chimney of the lighthouse. The sense of unease deepened as Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, prepared to go ashore. He was first to step onto the island, and as he climbed the steep path toward the lighthouse, a feeling of dread settled over him. The door to the lighthouse was closed, but not locked. Moore pushed it open and stepped inside, calling out for the keepers. There was no reply. The air was heavy with silence, an unnatural, suffocating quiet that only deepened as Moore ventured further into the building. The interior of the lighthouse was eerily undisturbed, as if the men had just vanished into thin air. The clock had fully unwound and stopped. The kitchen table was set for a meal that had never been eaten, plates and cutlery laid out but the food left untouched. 2 of the oilskins, the heavy waterproof coats that the men wore when venturing outside, were missing, but the 3rd oilskin still hung on its peg, suggesting that one man had left in a hurry without protection against the elements. Moore searched every corner of the lighthouse, every room, every passageway, but the 3 keepers were nowhere to be found. The dread that had settled over him upon his arrival now deepened into outright terror. Something had happened here, something terrible. The crew of the Hesperus joined the search, scouring the island for any sign of the missing men. They checked the landing stage, the steep cliffs, the rocky shore, but there was nothing. No bodies, no footprints, no signs of struggle. There was, however, evidence of a savage storm that had swept through the island at some point. The iron railway beside the path had been wrenched from the concrete, iron railings were bent over, and a rock weighing more than a ton had been displaced. Further clues as to what had happened were reportedly found in the lighthouse's logbook. The entries, written by Thomas Marshall, began to paint a picture of a mounting fear and anxiety in the days leading up to the disappearance. On December 12th, Marshall wrote of a fierce storm, unlike anything he had ever seen in his 20 years of service. He also noted that James Ducat had become unusually quiet and withdrawn, and Donald MacArthur, a man known for his tough demeanour, had been crying. This was strange indeed. These were seasoned men, well accustomed to the harsh conditions of the North Atlantic. Why would they react with such fear to a storm, something they had surely faced many times before? The log entries continued, describing how the storm had continued unabated for 2 more days. The men were clearly frightened. Marshall wrote that all 3 keepers had begun praying, something they had never done before. But perhaps the most unsettling detail was that, according to the weather records on the mainland, there were no storms reported in the area on those dates. The seas were calm. The final entry in the logbook, dated December 15th, was short and cryptic. Storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all. After that, the log fell silent. As compelling as this sounds, many years later an investigation found that these logbook entries were actually faked in an attempt to make the story sound more incredible. In reality, the only logbook entry spoke of the storm that had passed through, but made no mention of the emotional state of the men. Over the years, a number of theories have been proposed to explain what might have happened to the men. One of the most widely accepted theories is that a freak wave swept the men into the sea. The western landing, where the supplies were unloaded, was particularly vulnerable to the fury of the ocean. It's possible that Marshall and Ducat went outside to secure equipment or inspect damage during a break in the weather, only to be caught by a massive wave. When they didn't return, MacArthur, despite the danger, might have rushed out to help them, leaving his oilskin behind in his haste. If the wave had been large enough, it could have taken all 3 men, their bodies lost forever to the deep. But this theory, though plausible, leaves questions unanswered. Why would men as experienced as these leave the relative safety of the lighthouse during a storm? And given the harsh December climate of the Outer Hebrides, would one man really have left his oilskin behind? Another darker theory suggests that the men fell victim to their own isolation and the mental strain of their remote post. Perhaps there was a confrontation, a sudden, violent argument that escalated into tragedy. The isolation of the Flannan Isles could have weighed heavily on them, especially in the face of a relentless storm. Did one of the men, perhaps MacArthur, known for his volatile temper, snap under the pressure? Some have speculated that the men might have experienced a collective psychological breakdown, driven by the oppressive isolation and the eerie atmosphere on the island. The Flannan Isles have long been shrouded in superstition, believed by some to be haunted or cursed. Could the men have succumbed to their own fears, driven to madness by the isolation of the island and the relentless storm? Some more outlandish theories suggest the keepers might have been killed by pirates, eaten by animals, or even abducted by foreign spies. Only one thing is certain: the strange disappearance of the lighthouse keepers of the Flannan Isles is truly perplexing and may never be truly understood. So what do you think happened to these men? Was this a tragic accident, an argument gone awry, or something even darker? I'd love to hear what you think could have happened in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell icon, as it will really support the channel. Until next time.